Alright, so that's the basic things that you would do for tactical actions. Moving ships into systems, landing units on planets. If there's already somebody in the system, there's space battles, and if there's already somebody on the planet, there would be a planetary assault or an invasion combat round that we would go through like I just showed. Right. So let's say that everybody has passed at this turn, because everybody has done all the actions they can or want to do for this turn. So this will bring the action phase of our game round to a close. So then the third phase would be our status phase. And during the status phase, what we do is we kind of reset everything for the next round. So here's what we do. The first thing we do is we see if anybody qualifies for a public or secret objective card. So we go in turn order, again starting with the speaker, and then following through the number order on the strategy cards that we chose. We would look to see if anyone had finished the objective. And our first objective was that I now spend 10 resources. That's the only one that we have out in the game at this time. So nobody at this point probably has 10 resources, so nobody can score that, and probably nobody has gotten their secret objective either. But this is the only place where we can score victory points from objective cards, is only during the status phase. Okay, the next thing we do, we would repair any damaged ships. So let's say we had a dreadnought on the board, and it was in a space combat. Whenever a dreadnought takes 2 hits to kill. So what we do when it's damaged is we flip it upside down. So we can damage it, flip it upside down. At this point, in the status phase, we would flip those back over right side up because they have been repaired and they're at full strength for the next game round. So we would do that, any ships that are damaged. Then we remove all the command counters that we placed on the board. So we will remove our command counters for what we had done, and these don't go back onto our card, they go into our supply area. So we don't get those back right away to put on our card. We have what was just left at the end of our turn. We also refresh our planet cards. So we have some planet cards here that we have turned upside down because we used them, we just captured them. So now we flip them all back over so that they are now available to us for the new round. All the resources and influence of those planet cards. Then we receive 1 action card. Now, action cards we haven't talked about yet, but there's a whole big deck of action cards here, and they allow for all sorts of special things, different things you can do to mess up other players, different things you can do to help yourself out. So lots of different actions. So everybody would get one of these action cards. So let's say we get this one here, which is called Insubordination. And it says remove 1 command counter from the command pool of 1 opponent. And you would play that as an action during the action phase of the game. So that could be pretty nasty. You could, at any time on your turn in an action phase, you could take somebody else's counter off their card, which would mean that they would have 1 less action that they could take. Or you could take it, it's from the command pool, so it's 1 less action that they could take in the game. So that could be pretty nasty. So there's all sorts of those cards, and you can collect those as you go through the game. You'll get more and more of those, and they can be quite useful to you. So everybody would get an action card. Alright, and then everybody would get 2 command counters. So I get 2 command counters for my supply, and then I could look at my card here, and I could decide where I want to put them. Now at this point I can also redistribute any command counters I already have. So if I put these over here in my command pool, maybe I decide, I don't really want to take too many strategic allocations, but I want to make some extra moves. So I would maybe put another counter over there. Or maybe I would decide, I'm going to increase my fleet size to 4. So I would flip one of those counters over to the fleet side and put it there, and now I could have 4 ships in a system instead of just 3. And as you know, more ships in a system means that you can overwhelm your enemy a little bit easier. So you want to kind of watch that as you go through. Alright, so that would be doing that. And then the last thing we would do is we would return our strategy cards. We take our strategy cards, everybody would turn them back over, we put them back out on the board for everybody could reach them, and then they're all set for the next round. And that ends the status phase. So let's talk about trade and politics. Trading is a big deal in this game, and one of the cards that you can take, one of the strategy action cards you can take, is the trade card. If you take this card, this allows you to do two things. You can either immediately receive 3 trade goods and then receive trade goods from your active trade agreements, and then you can open trade negotiations among all players, and you must approve all new trade agreements. Or, if you don't like what's going on and you want to, you can cancel all trade agreements that have already been made. You can just cancel it all, and everybody has to take back their trade cards. So what you would do, if you were going to make some trade agreements, is each race has 2 trade agreement cards. The Sardok Nor have 2 cards. One is worth 1 and one is worth 2. And so they would make a deal. They'd say, okay, I'll make a trade agreement with you, my friends, the Nalu. And then they would say, okay, I'll give you this 2 trade card of mine for the 2 trade card of you. So you would exchange cards. Now, whoever played the trade card here would have the option, has to okay that. So this is where a lot of negotiation can come in. Sometimes there's bribes involved, for you're going to offer them something in exchange for them allowing you to make the trade good. And you can do that, whatever offers you want them to give you, you can ask for, or you can just flat out deny them the request to make that trade agreement. So that gives you some power there in the trade agreement. So everybody would be able to make those trade agreements. If there were any trade agreements already made and this card came into it, then the other players who didn't play this card could use a secondary ability which allows them to spend 1 command counter from their strategy allocation area to receive trade goods for your active trade agreements. Trade goods look like this. They're little round counters with some boxes on them. These are trade goods, and these can be spent as a resource to build ships or whatever, and it can also be used as an influence point for sake of the diplomacy or anything that takes influence. So it can be spent either way. So these are very useful to have, and if you keep a little stockpile of them on your sheet, there's a spot on your command sheet right here for trade goods that you would just keep those on there to keep track of what you have, and you can spend those at any time that's appropriate to affect things in the game. So that is the trade card.